All right, I want to welcome everybody to Baseball Beyond Borders webinar series. These webinars are a way to stay connected with community while highlighting life beyond the foul lines. We will continue to offer our webinar series in alignment with our Moving Beyond 12 9-inning framework that connects student athletes' passions to their academic future. Baseball Beyond Borders thanks you for joining our village today. Today, it gives me great excitement that we are joined by a dear friend, a sister in Christ, who happens to be one of the most dynamic learning success coaches I personally experienced, and that is Terikka Faciane of It's Time Inc. and the Messenger Experience. Terikka, welcome to our webinar.
Thank you so much, Buki, for having me. Excited to be with you guys today.
So should you have questions for Terikka, we ask that you use the chat feature and we will work to accommodate all questions in the time available. For those that joining us on Facebook Live, you also can utilize the comment feature to ask questions, and we will definitely get to that. And hopefully toward the end of the actual webinar session, Terikka can connect with you on the questions you may have. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Terikka Faciane.
All right. So I'm very excited once again to be here with you guys. And before we get started in helping you understand who your child is and their power traits, I need to give you guys a little bit of a background. So many years ago, at the age of 22, I was a high school teacher. And I loved that age group because I could talk for real to them. I could reason with them. It was just a beautiful experience. Now, fast forward 10 years, I became a parent and I had these little people that were very active, and I had to be with them day in and day out. I was very much so challenged by this experience. And as you see on the screen, these are my girls, Micah and Kayla. And so many days I was just overwhelmed by their degree of movement, their talkativeness. And my question was, why can't they just be a little bit more like me? Must everything be an adventure? And I was, like I said, they did not necessarily appreciate my core values of being quiet, of stillness for long periods. And I was frustrated. And so, and this really challenged me because I knew that I wanted to honor the seed of who they were. I knew that I wanted to nurture them, care for them, just, even more so than I did my high school students and wanting to launch them out. And so I was, to be honest with you, I felt like a failure on a regular basis. I just knew that I was missing it because my patience wasn't there. I, once again, didn't understand all of the shenanigery that was going on with them. To know me, you guys, I do make up words. So just follow with me. I promise it. I'm taking you somewhere. And so in the midst of all of this, this is when Providence smiled on me. I'm going to say God smiled on me because a resource came into my life that I needed more than I ever thought that I needed. And it changed the way that I viewed my children. And I really do believe that my children are alive today. Are well today because of this resource that came into my life. And I was introduced to this whole concept of understanding my children's power traits. Now, as a former teacher, I wasn't foreign to this whole concept of learning styles and modalities, which we'll be talking about tonight. But what I didn't understand was how all of these pieces needed to work together, to be understood together, come together for me to understand and have a complete picture of who my children were and how I could honor that. So just a little bit of background. Like I said, I was spared so much unnecessary frustration after I learned this whole concept of power traits. Now, as parents, I don't believe that we will ever be exempt from challenges, but it makes a difference when you can understand at least why you're facing what you're facing and you're understanding the uniqueness of who your child is. So that's what brings me here to you guys tonight. And I hope that I can shed some light on it for you so that you also can better understand who your child is and how to honor them in the process of how they're wired. Like I said, we never look at a seed. We never look at an apple seed and say, why can't you give oranges? You know what I mean? Because that apple seed is going to produce apples. But every time that we look at our children and we expect them to be something that's not a part of their design, we're basically in essence saying, I'm not really honoring your wiring and the seed of who you are. So I do want to shed some light on that tonight. So this is a phrase that I was given a couple years ago that that continues to resonate with me, is that maybe if we can help them avoid the kid life crisis, they can eventually avoid the midlife crisis. Because there's a lot of us in middle age who are asking ourselves, what have I done? Did I really want to work for the city for 33 years? You know what I mean? So I really want our children to be honored from the onset so that they can launch into the path and the destiny that's designed for them. So without any further ado, like I said, that's my background. I want us to go ahead and jump into these 5 components of power traits. Okay, so these are the 5 components. Next slide for me. There you go. So we're going to be talking about dispositions. Dispositions is just another word for personality wiring, and we'll talk about that. Modalities, just a big fancy word to say how we best take in and process information. Environmental needs, the things that we just need to be well. Our interests, those things that are at the forefront of our minds, and our talents and our smarts. So these are the 5 areas that we're going to be looking at. So once again, you may have heard about modalities. Oh, my kid is an auditory learner, so I'm going to, let them listen to audio tapes, or not tapes anymore, but audio versions of things. But once again, if we take that as a standalone modalities and we don't account for environmental needs or dispositions, what we're doing is like baking a cake without putting all the ingredients in, but still expecting to experience the goodness of the cake. So this is what we're saying is the 5 components that we need to understand to better honor the seed of who our children are. So let's go ahead and hop into dispositions and find out what we're talking about when we go there. All right, next slide. So these are the 5 dispositions that we're going to be talking about, but just let me give you guys a little bit of backdrop of what a disposition is first. So first of all, our dispositions are more inborn than we kind of created or try to facilitate it. It's what's hardwired into us. So each of us has a disposition, and they're all equally valuable. Now, as far as schools are concerned, there's some that are more appreciated than others. So that's why you may have some children having challenges in schools, because our school systems are not designed to cater to every disposition. And when I say cater, a lot of times people will say like, well, we shouldn't really be catering to anyone. Everyone needs to kind of get with the program. But here's the challenge with that. The school can't possibly monitor or account for the vastness of all of our gifts and our talents and who we are. So you may have a child who's going to school on a daily basis, and who they are is never going to be celebrated because it's just not conducive to the school setting. So I just want to empower you as a parent, as an advocate, to say, you know what, John, Sarah, I know that you may never be celebrated in this setting, but I need you to know that I see you and I understand who you are, so that you can give them opportunities to have atmospheres and situations where they can thrive, if that's not going to be facilitated in the school system. So once again, our dispositions are hardwired into us. It's what we show the world. It's how we show up. So all other aspects of power traits are going to be filtered through your child's disposition. So that's why this one we're going to spend a little bit more time on this one, because it is so key. Our dispositions determine how we work, how we communicate, how we learn. It determines how our behavior. So all of this can help us to give our kids like hacks and strategies and tactics when all the other systems that they may be experiencing may not be aligned to give them the best chance at success. So I want you as a parent to have the tools that you need to say, you know what, I'm going to recognize you for who you are and give you the tools that you need to succeed. So many misunderstandings happen between parents and children, and teachers and children, not because of defiance. A lot of times it's a dispositional issue. So remember what I shared with you guys about me conflicting with my children? It was like, I love being still. I can read, I can be in quiet, but those guys are movers and shakers, and they need that activity to be well. You know what I mean? So now I can understand you're not just trying to disobey me, as it were. You're living out the truth of who you are. So now I can say, you know what? You need a dedicated space for that. Because I always tell people, this is not about everything being child-centered. This is about being child-considered. Just like we want to be honored for who we are, these little people need to be honored for who they are. And that's why we have a lot of adults, once again, who were never honored for who they were. And so now as adults, it's almost like they don't know fully what they're about or what they're interested in, because that was never celebrated in their youth. So I want us to change that narrative. So once again, if we don't allow ourselves, or we don't begin to accept our children for who they are, their dispositions, then they're never going to get the acknowledgement and the acceptance that they need. And so it's very difficult to learn when you don't feel safe. It's very difficult to learn when you don't feel that your presence matters or how you show up matters. So I just want to encourage us to recognize that our dispositions are not something that we can take on and off. It literally is how we're wired and what's in our seed. Okay, so real quick, these are the 5 dispositions. I know you guys may have received a quick assessment in your email. So I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to take that, but I'm going to give us a brief overview of the brief dispositions. And so you're probably going to locate yourself just based on my descriptions. Okay, so you're spontaneous folks. Once again, this is not just children, this is adults as well. They are your movers, shakers. They're the ones who are the life of the party. They bring the fun, they bring laughter. In learning situations, they like things that are immediately relevant, that are fun and short and involves movement and competition. So you wonder why, you have maybe a certain group of students who may be in the principal's office a little bit more than others, because these guys are, like I said, they are life animation personified. So when you're expected to sit in a classroom all day at a desk and be still and quiet, can you imagine what this particular person and this child is going through? Okay, what they contribute to the world. They bring fun, laughter, excitement, adventure, playfulness. I would hate to see what our world would be like if we did not have the spontaneous disposition represented. Next, we move to the organized disposition. These are your planners, your organizers, your schedules. They like to do lists. They want to know, what is it that we're doing here? So as Buki and Liz had a chance to work with me, they probably could tell that I fall a little bit in this organized disposition. I like to have a plan. I like to have order. I like clear expectations. I appreciate quiet and workbooks. I don't mind drills. So guess what? This disposition is the teacher's dream, because they follow the rules. They like the rules. They want to know the rules. So once again, this type is celebrated. So they're going to typically do pretty well in school because they're focused and they're thorough and they're diligent, So we need those folks too, because without the organized disposition, what would ever get done? So once again, every disposition is valuable. We need them all. We move to curious. They like to discover, to find solutions. They need time to ask questions. These are the kids where you're just like, oh my gosh, if you just ask, why so many questions? Because they want to know the answer. They are curious. They are investigators. They need time to research. So when you kind of give them a project and you let them go for it, and then all of a sudden, it's like 15 minutes are up and you're like, time to move on. This student is extremely disappointed because they have just gotten into the heart of their research and now they have to transition to something else. So they need time with their projects and to explore. These are the kids who will debate you. Well, let's put it this way. They will debate you if they feel like you are a worthy opponent. They're not going to debate you if they don't feel like you have answers. So they may come off as a little bit, we're not going to say that. I thought my daughter was just extremely challenging. When I found out that she was curious disposition, I'm not going to lie, I cried a little bit because I just recognized what the journey was going to be ahead of me. She doesn't just accept the answer at face value. We have to do the research and bear that thing out. So once again, they have that sense of discovery and wonderment and problem solving. So we need the problem solvers in the world, especially during the times that we're living in. And next we move to the supportive disposition. These are the ones who are all about interaction, having harmony. They care about fairness. They care about being sensitive to others' feelings. So if someone is having a difficult time or feeling a certain kind of way, like this is the child that can perceive that and will take some of that emotion on themselves at times. So they are very cooperative. They like to work in groups. So when you're dealing with assignments, like it's almost torture for them to have to be forced to work alone. So just something to keep in mind, so they create atmosphere, they bring harmony, and they bring teamwork. So I don't know about you guys, but we need that experience in every dynamic. So once again, we need our supportive folks. And last but not least, we have our imaginative, or the ones who bring wonder. They contribute ideas, have an extreme imagination. They need time for observation and creativity and to think quietly. They love to contribute new ideas. These are the ones who you may call their name and you're like, are you listening to me? They're not trying to ignore you. They just have such a rich fantasy life and imagination life, and that they are lost in that world, So you may find them doodling and you wonder, like, are they hearing anything that I'm saying? It's, like I said, they are your artistic, your creative folks. They need the time to daydream. They are designers and beauty matters to them, So it's, can you guys see how all of these dispositions kind of round out our human experience? We need them all. Now, like I said, we all have our strengths and we all have our challenge areas, and we want to be able to grow because we still have to navigate systems in this world that we live in. But how much more easily would it be to navigate these systems if we were celebrated from the onset and being acknowledged for who we truly were before we were asked to comply with everything else that the world is asking of us? So that is just a snapshot of our dispositions. Like I said, our organized dispositions, our supportive dispositions, those are typically the ones that are celebrated in school. So you can imagine what the curious, the spontaneous, and the imaginative kids feel like on a regular basis. And then we expect them to hit 18 and hit the world and just go be movers and shakers. That's a very difficult thing when you spent a lot of your formative years in an environment where who you were was not celebrated, and you didn't feel very smart because who you were was not really able to be captured in the systemic school setting. So just something to think about as far as our disposition. So another thing too, we have our spontaneous kids, mover shakers. A lot of times they're often labeled as ADD, ADHD. And I'm not saying that some people don't deal with those things, but we have to be careful that we don't label things just based on it not conforming to what we want and need it to be in a certain setting. Okay. Like I said, most of our world changers are these curious folks, these imaginative folks. Like, we need them all. So I just want to encourage us, please take the time to understand how your child is wired so you can honor the seed of who they are, and they can, like I said, flourish into their adulthood years. All right, next slide. All right, now this one we may be a little bit more familiar with. A lot of us have heard about modality. So how we best take in and process ideas and information or learning of any kind. So we've heard auditory, visual, kinesthetic, and that's great. But the challenge with that is that there's more to modality than just saying, oh, you learn by hearing or by seeing or by movement. There are distinctions within modalities that we need to be aware of. So you may have the kid who learns by auditory, but is it through listening? So they can maybe watch a video, they can listen to the teacher speak, or they may be verbal. So there's some kids who will not understand what you're saying, no matter how many times you say it. They have to read it and say it for themselves. So those are the things that we're talking about, like understanding your child's particular gift mix. Now, it's the same thing with visual, picture, and print. Some people learn by, right now you're seeing this PowerPoint and you're like, okay, I can work with that because it's operating with my ability to see. But there's other people who are like, no, I need books, I need papers, I need graphs, I need charts, so just understanding. What I really want to emphasize with this one is just understanding the distinctions. When we see kinesthetic, we automatically assume, oh, body movement, jumping around, like let the kids run around for 5 minutes. No, it's not just the body movement. Some may need to draw it out. Some may need to have whole body movement. Some kids may need to take things apart and put it back together. Others may need to sketch it out. So these are just kind of the nuances of modality that we need to understand, because we'll just say, oh, auditory, so just give everybody a video series to watch, but they don't process everything in that way. So some assignments I may need visual, other ones I may need to take it apart and put it back together. So once again, it's not just this one size fits all modality. So it just behooves us to understand like how our child best processes and takes in information if we truly want them to be successful. All right, next slide, please. Now, this is an interesting one because this one we have a ton of control over, and we don't always think that we do. I don't know if you guys have ever said this to your child, it's like, I don't care, you get in that classroom, you respect your teachers and you just focus no matter what. But let us same adults go into a meeting and let us be hungry, or let there be a sound or a bug, or, just these things that are distracting us, and we can't focus at all. There's a reason they always bring food to these meetings, because they know that, we need to have some of those needs met. So that's the same thing that we're doing with our environmental needs. We're asking ourselves, what is it that we need in our space, in our world, for us to be well? There's some people who can absolutely work alone. They can't get anything done unless they're working alone. But then you may have someone else who's like, if there's not some sort of ambient noise or another person in the room, it's almost like they can't get anything done because they need that other presence. A lot of times we were just like, go in your room, do your work, sit at your desk, sit up, and our backs hurting. We weren't designed to sit at desk all day. You know what I mean? So they may need to lay on the couch or lay across the bed, or listen to certain music so that they can process what it is they're learning. So once again, it's just being sensitive that there's different things that we need. Psychology even bears out, like when you're surrounded by your favorite color, like it just does something to your spirit. I don't know if you've ever just been in a room and it may be like a powder color and it's just depressing and dark and dank and it's too dark, and it's just like I can't focus in that setting. So finding out what kind of lighting your child needs. Do they need sunlight? Do they need fluorescent light or low light? For me, I need the whole room lit up. I just need it lit up. And I'll try and go, my husband is in the office and he's working. I'm just like turning on lights and he's like, I don't need that. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So once again, we kind of sometimes, because we need something, we assume that other people need it, and that's not always the case. So once again, it affects our environment, affects how we learn, how we think, how we work. And so if you have a kid who knows that, like, man, every day at 10 o'clock, like, I'm starving, like, load them up with some almonds, granola bar, whatever those things are, because it's like just that little fuel can change their whole attitude. If you have a child who you know is not a morning person, that is probably not the best time for them to be signing up for a calculus class. So these are some of the things that we can absolutely navigate and mitigate if we just understand when is our most effective time of day. I'm a morning person, so if I'm going to get the bulk of my work done, it needs to really be done in that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock hour. At nighttime, you're not getting anything productive really from me. So if that's true for us, then how also is it true for our kids? But we expect them to go all day, to be at school all day, do practice all day, and still, you know what I mean, and still function. We're not wired, just to be all over the place like all the time. So it's just helpful to understand, like I said, what are those things that allow us to thrive. Same thing with the plant, how much sunlight it gets, how much water it gets. That's where we need to be mindful of our environmental needs. Okay. All right, next slide, please. All right, now we get to interest. Now, this was one thing that I don't think that anyone really asked me about this when I was a child. It was kind of like, you know what? We were from Texas, so you were going to play a sport. You were going, there's just certain things you were just going to do because that was just a part of our cultural norms. And so when you know your child's interest, like, that is going to be their greatest motivators. This is the things that are top of mind. You don't have to get a person to force someone to work towards their interest. I have a daughter right now who is teaching herself graphic design, and she's using a program called Procreate. She's on YouTube all hours of the day learning layers and techniques and things like that. Like, I couldn't have thought of meeting that need, you know what I'm saying? But because it's her interest, she dives in full force. So your interest, once again, will drive learning when nothing else will. And a lot of times, like I said, we're going to talk about this in a little bit. We know where our kids may be, what their talents are, their areas of giftedness are, and how they're smart. And we want them to, we always say, pursue your potential, follow your potential. But if their potential or the areas that they're smart doesn't line up with their interest, they're going to buck the system all day long, because that's not what they necessarily desire to be focusing on at the moment. So here's the gift to the parents. If you can understand what their interests are and lead by interest, you may be able to cut down on a whole lot of activities that you're taking your kids to and things that you're signing them up for, because you may be paying for piano lessons, but they're making it a nightmare for the piano teacher and they're just not there at the moment. So you can say, you know what? I'm not going to chauffeur you to 1,002 activities right now. Let's focus on meshing some of those interests with the areas that you're growing in. And so I really just want to encourage us to find out what your kids are interested in. And even if you feel like it's frivolous or it's not worthy of much paying attention to, you will be amazed at how just their work ethic to discover what they're trying to discover would translate into other areas of life that we deem to be more important, because they are developing skills, they are developing follow through, they are developing a sense of nurturing what matters. And my concern is, like, when they get in trouble or there's an issue, the first thing we start taking away are the things that they're interested in. I just want to caution us with that, because once again, when we take away things that are interesting, we really do make them question if their interests are valid. And then as adults, when we want to take a calligraphy class or a dance class, we're like, why does this even matter? Like, I need to be more practical. I need to focus on more, you know what I'm saying? Like, as adults, I don't know that we even know how to honor the things that we want to focus on, because they seem more like an interest instead of something that's serious and should be pursued in that manner. So I just want to encourage us to really lead with interest wherever possible, because once again, you will have them locked in. Okay. So I really just want to kind of make that point. All right. Let's shift to our next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about talents, or another word that I use for this is smarts. So the question I always say is, the question is not if your child is smart, it's how are they smart? Now, we already know that in school, they're pretty much going to be measuring that number, logic smart, word smart, those kind of things. But what happens when you have a child who is life enhancement smart or humor smart or animal smart? Those things are not necessarily going to be measured. So what happens when you are in a setting, like I said, for 13, 14, 15 years of your formative life, and the majority of who you are and what you are strong in is never celebrated? And that's why as parents, we have to know what our children's giftings are and how they're wired so that we can provide them opportunities. So you guys are probably even doing that now by just supporting your kids and being a part of the Baseball Beyond Borders and making sure they're at practices and having what they need. It's like, once again, those kids who are body smart. A lot of times we think body smart, once again, is just this need to move. It's deeper than that. Like, I literally learn by processing through my body. So someone else can learn a play by watching the coach put the plays on the whiteboard, but I'm the one who needs to be on the field, and you need to put me in position and tell me where to run or how to bend down. And now I got it. You know, your music smart kid, that's the one who's always kind of humming or tapping their pencil, or just just are driven by music. They find themselves, singing without even realizing, but it's like, where is that child's outlet? And here's the beautiful thing. If you can't fully see what your child's talents are or their smarts are, sometimes we have to experience it in reverse. So for example, you may have a child who is very word smart, but because they haven't learned how to mature in that or to hone that and to use that for positivity, they may tease or try to impress with words, or the kids who are kind of using their words for bullying. Like, if that thing can be flipped and they really could understand that they have been gifted with the word smart gift, like, it changes everything. You got your kids who are picture smart. Those are the ones where you may be talking and all of a sudden they break out laughing and you're like, what's so funny? Well, you said something, and because they're picture smart, they literally in that moment pictured it in their head and they can't get the thought out of their mind. So like I said, there's some kids who are not trying to be rude. They just got the giggles because someone said something. They have that image in their mind and they can't quite shake it. So once again, learning how your kids are smart so you can help them harness that and develop that. And just because, like I said, we may not be strong in certain areas, like I'm not very strong at all in the life enhancement area. Those are the people who can decorate, who can kind of cook, who can make you feel really welcome around the holidays and things like that. Like, I can, watch a YouTube video and put some things together, but it's still not my natural inkling to move in that direction. You know what I mean? There's some people who are truly gifted at that experience. There's some kids who may want to be dynamic athletes, but their body is just saying, you know what? I have other things in mind for you. So they may be the ones who are math smart and become your statisticians, but they still want to be around the sport. So I know that Mookie talks about that in some of the other innings. Like, how can we empower you to be your best self, but still be around the sport of baseball? You may have your graphic designers, you may have the people who create the music for the videos that Baseball Beyond Borders sends out. So like, you don't have to just say, oh, because you're not a natural athlete, you have to just be away from this. No, like, let's find ways to build and allow you to be around what you love, but still acknowledging how you show up best in the world. So your kids who are self-smart, yes, we all are part of a community, but your kids who are self-smart, and they need that time alone to reflect, to journal, to draw that energy from their interior world. So we have to be careful about not saying everybody needs to go and be in these cooperative learning models all the time. Like, that is draining to the self-smart person. Likewise for people smart, you don't want to just throw them and make them be alone for hours on end. They thrive by their interactions with people. So all I'm saying is, if we can just understand and kind of just get some of these things on our radar about like what makes us tick, what makes us show up, what makes us shine, then we really can begin the process of honoring the seed of who our children are. And so that is, like I said, that is just a high level overview, you guys, of the five power traits. And like I said, I want us to really understand that these are not like garments that we take on and take off. This is like who we are. So every time that we tell the child like, oh, you can't do this, and you shouldn't be doing that, or you should have more value for this and that, we're basically saying like, be less of who you are. And that's not the message that we want to send. So I just want to encourage us once again. There should be some materials that Buki and Liz sent out via email that gives you guys just a snapshot of the dispositions, a snapshot of the the areas of smart. So please take a look at that information and just really begin to kind of start the process of opening up your awareness of who your child is. Now, will you still have challenges? Absolutely, you will, because once again, you have your own power traits. So you may value communication and being people smart, and your child may feel more withdrawn. So you still have to navigate the landscape of us being different. But at least now you know that it's not about just once again, it's not about them just being defiant or disobedient. It's just literally about, this is a person who sees the world a little bit different. You know, when I have my kids do cleanup stuff, they're like, I give them checklists, and they're like, really, like we know what to. Well, I just want to make sure nothing is missed. So I know that. So if you can do your part and, you know, honor me, then I can honor you. So let's have some mutual honorariums here. So that's the part of, like I said, living life, you know. And if you have another kid who's very math smart, then, you know, that's the one to go to in the family to help the other kids out when some math challenges arise. So now you begin to know who's there to empower the other based on how they're wired. So so Buki, that's what I have as far as just our grand overview of understanding our kids' power traits. If there's any questions or things that anyone wants to chime in on, I am definitely here to be a part of that answering question process.
Terikka, thank you so much for bringing that. You know, obviously I've heard this before, and I continue to hear this as we interact together. But the fact is that it always is a refresher to understand really how kids wired, how our student athletes are wired. And I think it's important for coaches, not just in parents, but our coaching staff, to fully understand what are the modalities that exist within our team, right? What are the dispositions, and how do I take my teachings and apply that to the 12 to 15 student athletes that I have at my disposal? It's so important that we have that. And so if you have questions, we do ask that you use the chat feature. Other than that, I do have some things for you, Terikka, because I think it's important.
Yes, sir.
Because you had some nuggets, right, that I'm able to put in the back pocket when you talk about it's not defiance, it's really about the disposition. I think oftentimes as coaches, we get put in positions where we want to discipline a child just simply because of their defiance or their inability to follow whatever guidelines or rules that they're me. And it's not that it's intentional. Now, sometimes it is intentional, but for the most part, it's, if we don't know the disposition, then obviously we're doing ourselves a disservice as a coach to be able to support them and how they best learn. So what are some examples that you can give, right, that from a teaching standpoint, that can help coaches really understand? And you can use any sport analogy, because I know you're a big football, and you're from Texas, right?
So here's the thing. So discipline, and like I said, we do have young people who still need to be nurtured and disciplined and groomed. So we're not saying just throw all of that out the window. But if you know you have a kid who's imaginative disposition and you're trying to explain concepts and you need them to focus, you probably want to bring that student a little bit closer. Because the thing is, if they're closer and they're kind of in earshot and they're right there with you, they have a less opportunity for their mind to kind of wander and, you know, look at the butterflies that are in the field or just things that would otherwise be distracting. And so here's the thing. Once again, I'm saying to be child considered. So if the child knows their power traits and they see that you are endeavoring to honor them, now when you're asking them to do something that may be out of their wheelhouse or out of their comfort zone, they're more likely to comply, because everything is not, oh, you're an issue. You're always an issue. You're an issue. It's like, no, like I recognize what's going on here. So just because I know that I've been seen, now I'm willing to do things for you that I would not necessarily be willing to do for someone else who I'm just thinking always sees me as just a troubled child, or you know, someone who presents an issue versus someone who is different or diverse, who deserves to be valued. You know, so it's really just, like I said, opening up that that dialogue. The spontaneous kid, know that you're not going to necessarily do well by sitting there presenting to them for an hour at a time. You know what I mean? So it's and I know you're going to have a mix of kids, so you know, like, okay, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to do 10 minutes of this, and then we're going to bring it back and do this. So now they have that need for movement. Nobody wants to move for, you know, 24 hours straight. So, but if you've honored that need for them to move, and now it's time to kind of be still for a moment. Like, now we let you do what you needed to do. So now I need you to lock in with me. So once again, you're asking them to consider what's needed for the good of the program as well. It's not about revolving everything around every single kid, but it is saying, I understand who's in our mix, so we need to mix it up. Bring the imaginative kids closer, use those supportive kids to say, you know what, I need your help. You know, every time we get ready to do this, you know, we kind of got kids over here, whatever. You're very good at, being sympathetic to bringing people together. So empowering them to live into their supportive relating disposition. So giving them ownership.
Yeah, that's valuable. Thinking about this too, it's like, how do we get to celebrating the gifts of those that we have? Oftentimes we do consider them to be issues or problems, but yet they have gifts, right? And I think it's something that I remember you saying, and I think we did post this. It really spoke to children have present value, not just future potential. And I think oftentimes we say that, right? You can be great, or you will be great. No. I am great right now, right? And it's, you said it. It's really this concept of, it's not about if you're smart. I am smart. It's just, how am I smart?
Right.
It's the way in which we question, right? It's the language that we tend to use when we work with our student athletes to ensure that they have present value at this point in time, right? And I think when we listen to Colin Henderson speak around mindset, he used the acronym for WIN. It's what's important now, right? And so
that's good.
What is important right now? And it is that you are a gift to this program. You are a gift to this world. And so how are you utilizing that gifting that you receive? So there's so much that's impacting this, and I know we're running short on time. Do you got anything else you want to say?
So I would just say, once again, take the assessment, understand your profile, and don't just find out for yourself as a parent. Allow the child to do their profile and go through the My Book of Me, because the thing is, they are going to be responsible for stewarding their lives for the rest of their lives. So it's not just on everyone else to try to figure out how to make things happen. They need to also learn how to advocate for themselves and to speak up about what their interests are, what they're needing in the moment, or what their environmental needs are. Like right now, I just need some time off, or I just need to rest, because everyone is kind of dictating my day all day long. I have teachers telling me what I need to do all day long. I have parents telling me what I need to do all day long. So I need time to say, you know what, I just need time to spend on my interest right now so that I can refresh, so I can have restorative health, so I think it's important, like I said, for the parents to know, so they can advocate for the child that can't fully advocate for themselves. But the child also needs to know, this is what's in my seed, and how can I begin to develop the gifts that are in me, because they also have to take ownership.
That's good. So if you haven't already taken the assessment or did not receive it, we will be submitting and sending out this assessment to our student athletes and parents. If you also are not on or within our program and you're watching, whether it's on Facebook Live, send us an email, go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. We will send you the self-assessment or the assessment tool that you can take, really to understand how you're wired, and those 5 power traits that we talked about. Terikka, I can't just let you off the hook. This is something that we've created as part of our cultural norm during our webinars. We do have what we call a lightning round. I did forget to mention this to you.
Okay.
So it's just a few questions that we want to ask. It's really going to test your sport knowledge a little bit, but we just want to know who he is, right? We want to know who you are. And so it goes well beyond the learning success coach. Terikka also is a big fan of sport. So let's find out how much of a fan she is of sport. So if you played a sport, Terikka, which sport would it be?
It would actually be tennis.
Okay.
I like playing tennis. I ended up being more of like a team manager, but yeah, it's my competitive nature does not lend itself for me playing just congenially.
Greatest baseball player of all time to you?
Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson. So those are just, I haven't followed baseball like too much, so these are the ones who I've actually seen just in the icons of the sport. So
okay, I was going to say, if you actually seen them, you're aging yourself. But yeah,
I saw the Jackie Robinson movie, so I felt like I was one with him.
All right, favorite athlete of all time?
Who? Favorite athlete of all time? I'm gonna have to go back to my Texas roots. I'm gonna have to say Emmitt Smith. Just like I said, he just was in football lore in our Texas time there.
Okay. I figured a football response would be fitting for that. Favorite sports moment?
Probably when I had a chance to go see the Lakers and Clippers live, and we had just a little bit of antagonistic things going on with some of the other fan members, and so the Lakers just kind of stomped them out that particular game, and so I was able to gloat with the people that was in my specific area, and I have since apologized for that display.
You're all right. So if you've been to a baseball game, you know that there is this kind of theme that happens when a player walks up to the plate. It's called the walk-up song. So if you had a walk-up song, what would that walk-up song be?
Living Your Life Like It's Golden by Jill Scott.
I started to think about that when I was asking. Here's the response.
That is my go-to. Yeah, for showing up. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Terikka, we want to thank you so much for joining us this evening to share about the 5 power traits and encouraging student athletes and their parents about who they are and how they are wired. They are the greatest advocate. The parents
Absolutely.
are, even the child, you are a great advocate for yourself. So if you want more information on Terikka or about what Terikka is doing as a learning success coach, or just want to really get on a journey, really to understand who you are and why you are, visit itstimeinc.com, itstimeinc.com to learn more. Be sure to complete the survey at the end of the webinar that will pop up on your screen. For those that are on Facebook Live, we will actually put the survey in the link or the comment feature. Stay connected to us via social media on all platforms at BBB Inner City to stay up to date on future events. We thank you again, Terikka. We appreciate your time. And everybody else, make sure you stay safe, healthy, and hopeful. See you at the ballpark soon.
Y'all have a good evening. Thanks for having me.
All right.